Do you know that saying that opinions are like assholes? Everybody has one? Well, I think you see that kind of saying no more relevant than when you do in fandom circles, because fandoms are obviously made up of very passionate people. And by passionate, it can be in your general sense of the word passionate, all the way to the most violently fanatical people who would do anything to defend the piece of property that is the center of their interest, which is their fandom. And I think fandoms are pretty much made up of opinions, because you can't do anything without putting your opinion into it. You can't write your fan fiction or your fan art or talk in forums without expressing what you feel or what you think. And the thing about fandoms in the explosion of the internet in particular is that people have gotten a lot more volatile towards differing opinions. Opinions that don't match up to theirs. Now, I could talk about any fandom I wanted in regards to this. I could talk about the Hunger Games. I could talk about Good Omens. I could talk about a plethora of video games or books or movies that could all be relevant to this discussion. But I'm going to use Doctor Who as my main kind of example. Not to say that it only happens in Doctor Who, because fandom has existed all the way back, probably to Star Trek. Star Trek seems to be the genesis moment of particular fandom behaviour. And that was even before the internet. That was before the internet even existed. But, so that's not to say that Doctor Who is the only thing that like fandom that this happens in, but if I tried to discuss every single fandom out there, it's just not feasible. So we're going to go with what I know, and I know a lot about Doctor Who. In argument, I could also do the Hunger Games for this, but we're going to go with Doctor Who, because I've been on a bit of a Doctor Who roll recently on this channel. Now, for anyone new to this channel, I'm just going to give a quick little background, because I've talked about this before, but if anyone is new to the channel, particularly since my videos have had kind of like a bump recently, you might not know this from previous videos that I've discussed. So I'm going to talk about my background with Doctor Who as quickly as I can. I started watching Doctor Who as soon as I was able to consume media and understand what was going on. I was born in 1998, to give a kind of idea of whenabouts that would be. So probably around 2001, 2002, even when I was just old enough to stare at a screen, I was watching Doctor Who. That is because my dad had been a major fan of Doctor Who ever since he was a boy, and he had all the videos that were available at that time, he had all the DVDs that were available at that time, and so my sister and I were watching and enjoying the show before the reboot even happened. And I mean, like, when we were 3 or 4, we were watching it. Even if we didn't know what was going on, we were watching it. We were aware of it. We knew what Doctor Who was and what it was about. So even when the reboot happened, I knew about characters like Davros, like the Rani, like the Cybermen, like the Daleks, because I had been watching them on the screen. I even thought that Missy was going to end up being revealed as the Rani when she came into the show. And when the Master came in season 3, I was elated. I was like, oh my god, it's the Master. One of the best cliffhangers, by the way, of New Who anyway. So I was always aware of the show even before the reboot happened. Not to say I had an extensive knowledge, because when you're a kid, you kind of watch things and you kind of know the basic plots that's going on, but you're not exactly paying attention to the intricate details. Like, I would watch The Parting of the Ways and Bad Wolf, but I didn't exactly know that the humans from the space station who were being disintegrated were being used as body lab rat things for new Daleks. I didn't know that. I just thought they were being killed or disintegrated or transported to the ship and killed by the Daleks. But it's when you rewatch it as an adult, you start to notice the little details. But I was watching it, aware of it, a part of it, for as long as I can remember. Now, a lot of people would think that that doesn't count. You have to kind of watch it all or nothing to kind of be a part of the Classic Who fandom. And still to this day, I haven't watched every single Classic Who. I have every Classic Who. My dad gave me his collection, but I haven't watched every single one of them. In fact, I have been told by numerous people that I am too young to completely understand the Classic Who era, which is an opinion which this video is all about. that's my background with Doctor Who. That's how I got into Doctor Who. A quick note, I also stopped watching regularly post 2012 when Amy and Rory left because I didn't like Clara's character. I tried again with Peter Capaldi. The writing wasn't great in my opinion, and we'll get to that in a second. And I didn't tune in again until Jodie. Tried Jodie again. Couldn't get into Jodie either. And I've tried again now with Ncuti Gatwa, and I have good feelings about it. So that's kind of a history of where I am now as well with Doctor Who. So why do I want to talk about opinions? Well, the reason I want to talk about opinions is because you're not allowed to have one. Bit of an exaggeration, but in Doctor Who fandom, if your opinion isn't what either everyone else is thinking or what the majority is thinking, then you are wrong, and you're not allowed to express your opinion because you are wrong. I'll give an example. Obviously, when Doctor Who was rebooted, I was six turning 7 in 2005, and I wasn't allowed on the internet, obviously. My dad, though, was. And my dad was part of these forums that, they would talk about the episodes. There would be excitement and chatter about, the upcoming ones. And there would be people rating each episode based on what they thought. And, all the factors of plot, character, what happened, how it resolved, that kind of thing. And they would give it a rating. And my dad said that he started to notice the more it went on, the more people were just giving 5 out of 5 ratings without giving it much criticism, without really thinking too much about what happened in the episode. And he was trying to be a bit more critical, and when he would try to be a bit more critical and be like, yeah, but what about this? That doesn't really make sense. He got, you can't disagree, you can't criticize, you're not a real fan of Doctor Who if you don't like every single thing that's happening in this episode, and if you're not rating it 5 out of 5, you are not a good Doctor Who fan. You are a fake. And I have to disagree, because inflating the ego of the fandom and pretending that there is no faults whatsoever is just false, and it's not good to and this is in any case. Constantly praising something and not giving any criticism whatsoever means there's no room for improvement, and suggesting that something is perfect is just dishonest. Doctor Who is not perfect. Even the Doctor Who that I loved is not perfect. Even the Doctor Who that I grew up with is not perfect. But you'll find that a lot, that you're not a real fan if. And I've been part of fandom circles since 2012. Nowhere near probably as long as a lot of other people who have been part of the fandom, but I've been there around, the kind of explosion of fandom, Tumblr and that kind of thing. And you're not a fan if comes up a lot. You're not a fan if you don't like every single episode. You're not a fan if you don't like David Tennant. You're not a fan if you haven't watched the classic era. You're not a fan if you've only watched the New Who era. You're not a fan if you only just started watching last week. You're not a fan if you've only watched the DVDs and haven't read the books. You'll find all sorts of opinions. And to me, the only thing that makes you not a real fan is if you don't like Doctor Who. That should be it. There should be no gatekeeping or no lines in the sand of you're not a fan if. But there are. Because people seem to like to have a superiority with these kind of things. People who have seen every classic episode like to feel superior and look down upon those who have only watched the New Who era, and they don't value their opinions, as if their opinions don't matter because they haven't watched the old era. I remember years ago, I can't remember, that's a lie, I do remember what video it was. There was a band back in around the 2012-2013 era called Chameleon Circuit, and Chameleon Circuit made and wrote songs about Doctor Who. And I can't remember which song it was. I think it was called The Travelling Man. There's a line in it or something that says, even if he has to die 507 times. And there was a big discourse going on in the comments going, he only has 13 lives, he doesn't have 507 lives. What are you talking about? You're not a real fan. Not to mention that one of the members of this band was Charlie MacDonald, who she was invited on to Doctor Who Confidential back in the day to interview actors and stuff like that because her channel was so big talking about Doctor Who, but not real fan. This big discourse was going on about what his real lifespan was, and I kind of commented saying, I think the 507, the number, comes from the Sarah Jane Adventures episode, because I think it was mentioned in The Death of the Doctor. I think it's a 2-parter with Matt Smith and Katie Manning and Elizabeth Sladen. And then I had someone in the comment going, typical answer from some young person who's only watched it since 2005 and doesn't know what they're talking about. Something along those lines. And I commented going, dude, my favourite story is Dalek Invasion of Earth. The one that I've watched the most is Remembrance of the Daleks. Curse of Fenric used to scare the shit out of me. I have been watching classic episodes. And the guy never replied to me. But even with me saying that, let's take a minute and imagine that I hadn't been part of, like, the classic era, like, fandom. Imagine I hadn't watched any classic episodes. That shouldn't have taken away from what I said. I'm pretty sure it was said in Death of the Doctor there was a bigger number than 13 that he mentioned, 13 lives. That is a fact. So what I said, whether or not I had watched classic era, new Who era, never read the books, never listened to the audio stories, what I said was true. So it shouldn't matter where I came from in the fandom. But to this person who clearly thought that they were superior because they watched all the classics or something like that, they clearly were looking down on the people who were from the new era. And it's hard to even know what the new era is now because they've did a soft reboot. So is it like the first new era? Is this era that's coming in now the new era? I don't even know. That shouldn't have taken away from my opinion. And this is a very prevalent thing all over fandom. And I used to be like that. I used to think that anyone who liked the idea of a female doctor, and you'll see it in my older videos, I hated the idea of a female doctor. I did a whole video about how I didn't like the idea of a female doctor. And I still stand by some of the things I said in that video, that I don't believe that cemented male characters should be turned into females, that I think new, amazing female characters should be written. I still believe in that. But I'm not so hard up about the Doctor having a female incarnation now. And I'm not that annoyed about people who have the opinion that they liked it and they enjoyed it, because that's their opinion. And that's the thing with maturing, because I started this channel in 2016. I was only 17 turning 18. I was barely out of childhood. So I was still having a lot to learn, and I was still having a lot of maturing to happen. But if there are some people out there who have been watching Classic Who since Classic Who was airing, and something tells me that if they were watching Doctor Who since Classic Who was airing, they are not just out of adulthood. Just a hunch. But what I'm trying to say is that I wish that there was more acceptance of differing opinions, because when you come down to it, Doctor Who is a fictional TV show. There is nothing that is real in it, apart from how it makes us feel and joins us together as a people, as a community, as a fandom. And the fact that people get their backs up so hard about the opinion of other people about a TV show that's about a man that unfortunately does not exist, is not real, is just sad. And I used to be one of those people. I must emphasize that. I used to get in all sorts of fights on Tumblr, whether it was about Doctor Who, Hunger Games, The Mortal Instruments. I was fighting everybody who I thought was wrong. What made me want to make this video was that I did a TikTok recently about Love and Monsters, the Series 2 episode. I think it's Series 2 episode 10. Because I think Fear Her's episode 11. I'm not sure. And I did a TikTok. I don't know if I'll be able to include it because the audio from Mr. Blue Sky is in it, and I don't know if it's it would be flagged up as copyright. It probably would be. But I did a TikTok about how that episode is viewed as one of the worst ever episodes of Doctor Who, but it introduced me to the music of ELO, and how can I be mad at that? And a lot of comments came in of people saying that Love and Monsters is actually their favourite episode, and they really enjoyed it. And for context, Love and Monsters is genuinely known, in consensus of the majority of the fandom, is known as one of the worst episodes that New Who has ever produced. That and Fear Her, which is ironic because they came one after the other. But a load of people were talking about how much they enjoyed it. And there were people who were scared of it. My sister was scared of it. She didn't like the Absorbal Off at all. And it just goes to show that even when there's a big general consensus about something being terrible, there are still people who like it. And those people, their opinions are just as valuable as the consensus of the fandom that episode is terrible. And I'll be honest, I don't think Love and Monsters is the worst episode ever. I wrote in the TikTok that it was known as the worst episode because it is. But I think there are far worse than Love and Monsters. I loved the new perspective that it gave us. It showed us the perspective of an everyday person affected by events of the Doctor who didn't get to go and travel with him. And how that affects people and how he touches people's lives and affects them, not always in a good way, and then flies away and they don't know what to do about it. I thought that was a really interesting thing to explore in the episode. Zorbeloff part, head in the pavement stone at the end. That's where you lose me. But there are people who will fight you tooth and nail to tell you that you are wrong. You are not a real fan if you like Love and Monsters. You clearly don't have any critical analysis in you if you think the Love and Monsters is a good episode. How the hell can you believe that the Love and Monsters pavement stone in the head thing is a good episode? You clearly don't know what you're talking about. And it's so frustrating because everyone's opinion should be valid. And I know that I'm talking about this like some ideal world where everyone's going to agree and everyone's going to be great. But you take away from the fun of participating in a fandom and participating in debate and talk and conversation about this beautiful program when you try to tell people what they should and shouldn't think. I think it's amazing that some people love Love and Monsters. They think it's their favourite episode. I think that's amazing. A bit hilarious, but amazing. There are some people who hate all of New Who loved Classic Who. That's valid. There are some people who love New Who but couldn't get into Classic Who. That is valid as well. Everything should be valid. The only thing that shouldn't make you a real Doctor Who fan is if you don't like Doctor Who. In fact, I think that stands for anything. Don't like Hunger Games? You're not a Hunger Games fan. Team PETA, Team Gale, doesn't matter. You still like the Hunger Games, you're a Hunger Games fan. You like the Mortal Instruments? Then you're a Mortal Instruments fan. Doesn't matter whether you like the books, the TV show, the movie, you're still a Mortal Instruments fan. And I think I've done a video like this similarly before years ago called You're Not a Fan If. But I wanted to focus a bit more on opinions on this episode, or this video, because I've noticed that opinions have become very... controversial might be the right word. If your opinion doesn't fit in with someone else's, then they're going to tell you you're wrong. And let me tell you guys, you're not wrong. If something is subjective, which in terms of a TV show, yeah, most of it is subjective. Unless you try to say David Tennant wasn't a doctor, that's a fact. That's not subjective. But if you say you didn't like David Tennant as the Doctor, that's an opinion, and that is valid. You might not like, David Tennant. Sylvester McCoy, for some reason, is known as one of the worst doctors ever. Maybe because of his era. His era didn't help him. Same with Colin Baker. I vastly enjoy them. I still vastly enjoy their eras. And that's valid as well. And even the people who don't like their eras, that's a valid opinion too. And I just wish more people would have that opinion too. I don't get as much fighting. I don't get involved in fighting on the internet anymore. Even when someone is really rude in my comment section, I just don't have time for it anymore. Because it's just like, okay. Like, someone made fun of my hair in my previous video, and it was just kind of like, my hair's not for everyone. Okay. Because why bother? Why get your back up? And if it really bothers you that someone's opinion doesn't align with yours, go and find your people. Go and find your people who agree with you. I don't agree with surrounding yourselves in echo chambers and people who are going to repeat the same opinions back to you. But if that's where you feel comfortable, then that's where you go. But getting into the fights is not an answer. Insulting people is not the answer. Or maybe I'm just talking about, obvious stuff here. Maybe what I'm saying is just, people are going to be watching and going, duh. But I don't know. It's just something I want to get off my chest. Particularly because of the Love and Monsters thing. I was just like, oh my god, there are actually people who enjoy Love and Monsters. Which, you know what? Good for you. I don't mind it. I don't hate it. Don't love it. I don't mind it. I loved the idea. I thought the idea was an excellent premise. Don't think it was executed exactly well. I still loved it. Anyway, guys. What are your opinions on this video? Sorry, I don't know. I'm full of energy today. I don't know where that came from, but what are your opinions on the video? Do you agree? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know down below. Like, comment, and subscribe. Big news. New book coming out in June 2024 on Kindle. It is in the same universe as The Seven. It is a prequel, and it's going to be a short story. If the Word document transfers to book the same way as it is on my Word document, then it'll probably be counted as a short story. But coming June 2024, it's not listed on Amazon yet. But in the meantime, check out The Seven. It's free on Kindle Unlimited. It's a Kindle exclusive. If that interests you, check it out. I'll leave a link down below. Don't do any of that if you don't want to. I don't want you there if you don't want to be there. And remember, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has them, and they're all valid.